I also wanted to mention that in the run-up to this, I want to just provide an overview of some of the folks that we've been involved with meeting with and providing briefings for over the last 15 years or so. Via the Rockefeller Initiative, which all of you know about now, President Bill Clinton and his wife, First Lady Hillary Clinton, CI Director James Woolsey, Admiral Tom Wilson, the head of Intelligence Joint Chief of Staff, with whom I visited for a couple of hours. It was a 45-minute stand-up briefing that went on for over 2 hours. An astronaut, Edgar Mitchell, was there with me, as well as some other Disclosure Project witnesses. That was in the 90s, before the Disclosure Project was known publicly. Senator Claiborne Pell, those of you who went to college who were poor like me, don't Pell grants, you could have a Claiborne Pell to thank. Congressman Dan Burton and many other congressmen who were at the 1997 Disclosure background briefings for Congress. Congressman Dennis Kucinich, General Patrick Hughes, the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, personal long briefing. That's a 2-hour talk about what happened at that meeting. Colonel Canola, the intelligence officer, and Bruce Ashcroft at Wright Patterson Air Force Base, Foreign Aerospace Technology Center, where the Roswell remains were sent. This meeting was ordered by the head of intelligence joint staff, Admiral Kramer, over the objections of the head of intelligence for the Air Force, and he made it happen. I went from the Rockefeller Ranch directly to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And it goes on and on. People like Prince Charles, Prince Hans Anna von Liechtenstein, Lord Hill Norton, 5-star Admiral, Admiral of the Fleet, Minister of Defense head. I sat with him in his cottage in Hampshire, and he looked at me and he said, "Dr. Greer, I was head of the Ministry of Defense. I was head of the Military Committee for NATO. I was head of MI5 and MI6. No one ever told me about this. Why not?" And I told him, and he was very upset, as have all these men and women that I briefed in high positions in government who have been lied to. I said, because if they told you, they might have to kill you. And he chuckled. I said, well, the truth is this. Folks like yourself, they do what's called a soul biopsy. I use a medical term. And they do an analysis to see if you're willing to go along with the secrecy. And the secrecy entails keeping from the public, not only that we're not alone, but that there are civilizations visiting us whose technologies we have studied for over 60 years and have figured out how they operate. And anyone who cares about humanity, about the earth, about the biosphere, about ending world poverty, will understand that these technologies would give us a civilization without poverty and pollution. However, it would upend and terminate the multi-$100 trillion oil, gas, coal, and nuclear industry. And I said, what would you have done if you knew of such a group that was keeping this secret? He said, I wouldn't have stood for it for a bloody moment. I said, that's why they didn't tell you. That's why they didn't tell you. You would not have put up with criminal and illegal secrecy that has resulted in the state of the world today. And for that reason, you were kept in the dark. And there been people in your position who knew? Yes. Have been there CIA directors who knew? Yes. Dick Helms knew. Bill Colby knew. Bush Sr. knew. However, if you're someone who hasn't come from a certain pedigree, it doesn't matter what your rank is. This is an existential threat to our democracy. And as Eisenhower pointed out, it will become a threat to our way of life and our freedom, and so it has been. And this is why we have to start a new civilization based on the truth. One of the meetings I had that was of great interest, to me at least, was with the Secretary General's family at Boutros-Boutros-Ghali at the United Nations. That was primarily to discuss how do we come together as a people and decide we're going to make peaceful contact with these civilizations, and how is that going to be effectuated? And Leah Ghali, when I was doing a briefing at the United Nations, greeted me in the Great Hall at the entrance. And I was with one of my daughters, and I thought, oh, we're go through security and the scanners, and there's all this commotion, and she ushers me in. We go around the security. I guess they thought I was okay. And Mrs. Boutros-Boutros-Ghali looked at me, and she said, When are you going to get this done? I was astonished. I'm a doctor in North Carolina, running an emergency department, taking care of shootings and stabbings and car wrecks and cool things like that. Well, I said, well, your husband's the head of the world, the head of the United Nations. And she says, no, it's too dangerous for Boutros. And I said, what am I, chopped liver? And the answer is yes. So I'm an insignificant person in the sense that I'm not important, and in the scheme of things, and many of these people have wanted us to do what we're doing, have wanted me to do. The senior scientist who deals with this subject at the CIA contacted me after we started these disclosure efforts in 92, 93, 94, and he had one of his associates fly in whose family founded the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. And he says, we desperately need you to do this. I said, why? He said, I'm a doctor here in an ER. They said, yes, but we think you can do it. And you and the public can make this happen. But the people who are in the system are trapped in the system. And I slowly began to understand that they were saying to me, we're free because we're not in that system. And so why don't all of us come together and exercise our God-given liberties and tell the truth about this? That was really how the Disclosure Project started and the worldwide disclosure movement. Ultimately, I ended up meeting with so many people: astronaut Gordon Cooper, Admiral Mehran of the French government, who I mentioned earlier today, and the list goes on into hundreds and hundreds of these sort of senior officials. But over the course of all this, what I really have found is that uncommon courage is needed by a lot of people to turn this ship around. Not me, and not just one or two of you, but millions of people. And that's what this whole citizens effort is about. From 1997 to 2001, I vowed to work as hard as I could to pull together the best sources of intelligence willing to come forward. There's a qualifier. I have over 500 top secret guys giving me information. I only have around 100 of them on digital videotape. The others are afraid for their lives. But let's acknowledge people like John Callahan and Gordon Cooper and others who have stepped forward and have verified the truth.